talk about a plan going wrong. Well, you got the wife. That was working, even though it only happened because of something silly. That really was not the main cast's fault. It was the guest stars' fault because they were the one that basically latched onto the idea and caught Jerry off guard. But it's still a good episode. And, yeah, it went a little nuts, downward spiral. And unfortunately, nothing ended up right for most of the characters at any time. But this episode, of course, that's what happened. At the beginning, we have Jerry and Meryl, who seem to be going good so far. They had pancakes. We have Kramer, and he has Anna, his girlfriend. Unfortunately, because of, some concerns and insecurities, that went up in smokes at the end. Elaine thought this one guy she was interested in was into her. Then that went up in smokes. And then there's George, who was the only person who probably was a victory in this episode because he got his butt saved. Everyone else, unfortunately, did not. But The Wife is still a good episode. I do enjoy it. I also more so enjoy it now because I've been binge watching, of course, Friends. Since I started dating my girlfriend, I was on a hiatus now for a bit because I didn't have access to season 6, but once she got me season 6 for Christmas, I've been able to, go back and watch some of the episodes I was able to see because she was missing some discs from the previous seasons. But, of course, now that I've been binge watching Friends also, in between while I'm doing Seinfeld reviews, I, of course, definitely, I'm much bigger fan of this episode because, of course, it guest stars Courtney Cox, who, of course, we all know played Monica Geller in Friends. And, of course, this episode, The Wife, actually aired 6 months before Cox started playing Geller in Friends. So this was right before her career really took off. And she is a good actress, so props to that shot as well. You never know, you always keep finding out these things like, oh, this person appeared. Oh, I recognize this person appeared now, whatnot. So, cool. But let's talk about The Wife episode. Again, this was a good episode. It starts off with Jerry in his apartment as he's now dating Meryl. I don't remember her last name, but again, she's played by Courtney Cox. And they're getting ready to go to breakfast. And they're also talking about how many times, the I love yous. Like, I think it's like 12 to 8, but there's actually 15 to 8 or whatnot. So I think Jerry's a little behind on the I love yous or whatnot. I believe Kramer introduced them to his girlfriend, Anna. Seem to be getting along very well. But they're getting ready to go out and get breakfast. They're going to get pancakes. And they had a thing where they brought in their own maple syrup, which, they never had a problem with. But, of course, this episode, at one of the scenes, they get caught with the maple syrup by the restaurant's owner. And it was the same owner that told Jerry and George to settle down back in the alley episode when they were arguing. And he had, like, a very unique way of just correcting people, like, intimidating but funny. But we had that as well. But anyway, so when they're getting ready to leave, Jerry puts on his jacket. He says he hasn't worn this jacket since he took it to the dry cleaners. He happened to reach in his pocket, and he found this locket in his pocket. And he goes, He goes, I haven't worn this since I picked it up from the dry cleaners. Maybe we'll take it to the dry cleaners, see maybe anybody lost it. They go to the dry cleaners, and the guy who works there, Marty, says that it's a locket of his wife, who had died 8 years prior. And he'd been looking all over the place for it, and he couldn't find it for the longest time, but now he finally found it. And for that, he offered Jerry a permanent 25% discount for his family for any dry cleaning service they get, at their shop. Well, Meryl, who was with him, she decides to kind of put a twist on and say, well, you might as well give me the discount too because I'm his wife. Which, again, this was all Meryl's idea. It wasn't Jerry's idea. So Jerry just goes along with it. And Meryl is, of course, given a discount as well. And off of that, people started getting very greedy. They were giving Jerry all their stuff and having him take it to the dry cleaners to get done. I don't know if, Marty ever got curious or whatnot of what was going on, but, it was definitely getting a little bit out of hand. Kramer gave Jerry a quilt that he always sleeps with. He gave that. I think Elaine and George gave him a few things. Like, everybody was giving him all stuff. We'll get to that story further on, because that of course covers what happened with Kramer in this episode. But meanwhile, Elaine and George, they're both at the health club throughout this episode. Elaine was waiting outside for George at the health club, where she sees this airline pilot she's had a thing for named Greg. And they're talking, and then he gives her he leaves and gives her this very awkward type of kiss. And of course, since Elaine's into him, she's wondering, what does this mean? What is that a sign of? She's not sure, but she's definitely into this guy. So she discusses it with Jerry, and then her and Kramer, I guess, said something about well, of course, Jerry told him about what's going on with him and Meryl, with her posing as his wife so she can get his dry clean discount. Which, of course, probably back then it was a big thing, because, laundromats and, cleaners, where now you have your own washers and dryers at home. So, again, it's not really as big of a thing as it used to be. But, some, stuff like suits, we still take to the cleaners here and there. But anyways, so I guess Kramer and Elaine made some pact where, if they're not married in 50 years, they'll just get married to each other. They're basically each other's backup plan, just in case if nothing ever happens. Of course, how the series ended, how it ended up, so I don't know if they ever did go keep that pact or whatnot. Anyways, so George finally shows up. Elaine got sick of waiting for George, and she left. George, though, sounded very upset. And Elaine says, "What happened to you? I waited for ages for you outside the health club." And he claims that somebody caught him urinating in the shower. And of course, he's worried that some people saw him, and they're going to report him, that he could get in big trouble for it. Well, later in the episode, when Elaine sees Greg at the health club again, she finds out that Greg saw George peeing in the shower. But yet, Elaine, Elaine, the guy doesn't know that Elaine is friends with George. But then Greg, takes starts showing these signs of Elaine needed her water opened or something like that, and a guy used his own shirt that was filled with his own sweat to open it up. So Elaine's just like, oh, so he's sharing his sweat with me. This might mean he's into me or whatnot. I think also he didn't clean his sweat off of a machine or something like that at one point in the episode. So she thought that, wow, he doesn't clean it off either, so he means he wants me to bind in with him, basically. But when she finds that out, that Greg has intentions of reporting George to the manager, Elaine torn, she wants Greg to like her, but she also wants to stick up for her friend George as well. Well, then things start going sour also with the dry cleaning stuff. First off, it does show some signs where Meryl and Jerry are kind of having some petty little arguments about some can opener stuff, which they did resolve that. And then, of course, more people started finding out about their marriage. Because Uncle Leo ran to him at the dry cleaners, and of course, because it was right in front of Marty, Jerry had to introduce Meryl as his wife to Uncle Leo. And of course, Uncle Leo is the type of has to know everything. He's just you got married and I wasn't invited? And of course, he goes off and tells Jerry's parents. Then Jerry they call him. Jerry has to explain that scenario to them. So that starts getting out of hand. And then Kramer, of course, gave Jerry that quilt to get cleaned. But of course, it was taking forever for that quilt to get back to him. Kramer wasn't sleeping well because he needs his quilt. His quilt helps him sleep his best. And of course, he looks very tired and just doesn't look, he doesn't look presentable as well to even go out in the public. But then he freaks out because he has to meet Anna's parents. So, and he's with how tired he is and everything, he's because I'm going to give a bad impression because they're pretty, picky and whatnot. So then he has a plan. Now, this is actually how the episode ends. Well, the last scene is where he actually shows up at her parents. But Kramer gets the idea of he's going to go to the tanning salon and get a nice tan to, make him, clean him up a little bit. Well, unfortunately, because of his lack of sleep lately, he ends up falling asleep while getting the tan, and he basically comes out crispy burnt. And when he goes to Anna's parents at the end, in the last scene of the episode, um, yeah, he does not. It doesn't go well. The parents basically disapprove of him immediately. So that didn't work out for Kramer, all because he couldn't get the quilt. And of course, when Jerry went to go check on the quilt next day, Marty says, oh, I'm sorry, but it's not ready yet. And of course, Kramer busts in, and of course, Jerry, to cover the fact that he's paying for his quilt, says that he's a friend gets upset when things don't go his way. But again, Kramer's just like in a bind because he can't sleep well without that quilt. As far as the Elaine, Greg, and George scenario, they're at the health club again working out. And earlier, whenever he had not wiped the sweat off of the machine, George points out that's also a health club violation. Now he actually report him for that. So of course George is begging Elaine to try to talk to him, to try to talk Greg out of reporting him. And Elaine was still in between about it, but of course she's still trying to, she wants him to like her. But then he sees the manager, who is, I'm not going to deny, a good-looking blonde. And she's definitely, again, I say that as in, yes, I may think she's attractive, which I try to say out of respect. I do have a girlfriend, but she definitely, there's some people on TV where, with how attractive they're like, you can tell they're there to look like, the attractive one that, would catch the eye. Like they're the hot ones. But then Greg says, "Oh, there's a manager. I think I'm going to talk to her about that guy urinating in the shower." And he even points out when he sees George, he points him out. But once again, Elaine won't admit that she's friends with George. But Greg also says he's interested in the manager, not just to tell George, but he actually has a thing for her, which then sets Elaine to easily pick a side and pick George's side. So basically, she basically just stands up for George and basically says, if you don't tell the manager about George urinating in the shower, she's not going to tell the manager that Greg doesn't wipe his sweat off the machines. Which worked. So George, again, was the only person who came out of this episode with a victory. Not getting in trouble. But Elaine lost out on getting the guy she wanted. Kramer, was not approved by Anna's parents. And then there's Jerry, who obviously, got into a bind when people started finding out about his lie about him and Meryl being married. Then it comes back to haunt him because after the scene where he went to check on Kramer's quilt, after Kramer left, another woman came in. I think her name was Paula, I think it was. I can't remember what her name was. I think it was Paula, yes. She comes in, and she can't afford to the price to get her stuff cleaned. Jerry, of course, feels bad, and basically, obviously, he has some sort of like an attraction for her. He basically follows her, and they go to Monk's, and he insists on letting him, have the clothes turned in, so he can get his discount to help her out. Which she insists, no, I can't do that. It's not fair. And of course, also, that he's getting sick of of Meryl and her bossiness, and that Jerry says who cares about her, and of course, Paula knows about her. But then Jerry chases her down the street. He goes, I can't deny this. And then they kiss. And then I forgot what they said. But then Jerry ends up taking the clothes to the dry cleaner. But then Meryl goes to pick up their clothes. Of course, the first thing that she gets is Paula's clothes, and she's like, "That's not mine." And then Marty says, "Oh no, your husband dropped these off." And she's like, "He did." So she goes home and confronts him, and then they get into a little fight, and then Jerry says he wants a divorce. And then it kind of seemed like they mellowed down and, left on good terms at least. Meryl admitted that this was all her fault because, she kind of pushed this on her, basically just randomly blurting out that she can be his wife so that she can get the dry clean discount as well. Jerry goes, I just don't think we're just ready for a pretend marriage. And then he says something like, but we'll always have pancakes. They seem to depart on good terms, but it just didn't work out. But yeah, all that happening. That's the episode. The wife again. I like it, and I like it a lot more personally because again, I'm definitely like watching Friends now, and of course, just seeing Courtney Cox in there. Just like okay, there's an actress I'm more familiar with now. But I do like the stories and how they were just silly stuff. But again, unfortunately for three of the four, it didn't work out for them. But in the long run, though, George got the victor. Was got the victory here. Of course, he does get the victory, of course, in the last episode of these next 6 episodes I'm reviewing, but we'll get to that one in a little bit. But that is that's the wife. Next episode is the fire, which actually has another similar like monologue type scene. Like it wasn't a last minute right. It was like originally had a different idea to it, but it got turned around with it. But it does have like a nice little other very well known monologue. And so far we've had the JFK parody from the boyfriend episode. We did have the marine biologist recently, also with George's long monologue telling a story about how he saved the whale. And then in the fire next episode, Kramer has the long monologue story that makes for some pretty good TV as well. So I do look forward to talking about that next when we get to the fire. So guys, that was The Wife. What were your guys' thoughts on The Wife? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content on my channel, and follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirborne93. My other question is I'm guessing there's no storytelling as to why Jerry lost a dry cleaning discount, because I do know in season 6, at least, he did go see the dry cleaner, which same place, so it was a different guy, but that's the episode. That's like the secretary episode, because it was the guy who Jerry has caught him and his wife wearing Jerry's clothes that he dropped off at the dry cleaners out in public. But we'll talk about that, of course, we get there eventually. But we got the fire next. It's another good episode. But till then, guys, slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content on my channel, follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Until then, guys, I'm the Club of DemandX93. I'm checking out. I'll see y'all later. Stay classy, guys, and peace out, everybody.